you know, with like the facial expression and the bright blonde hair, as opposed to the stunningly gorgeous person she was in the picture from Stanford, where she just looks like a normal, gorgeous gal. And Jason Whitlock, he's amazing. He posted on X, quote, "Look at what the WNBA stole from us. The young lady on the left is the dream of every black father and every black son. The woman on the right is feminism's creation and a nightmare."
One explosive on-court clash, one bold social media declaration. Suddenly, DJ Carrington's past is under the brightest spotlight, and the revelations are rewriting everything fans thought they knew. From a privileged sports dynasty to unexpected personal storms, the layers peeling back right now are leaving jaws dropped and timelines exploding. What she said about Sophie Cunningham didn't just spark drama. What if the fiery words that lit up the WNBA had roots no one saw coming?
About whether it was the right call and things of that nature. And they don't even mention the fact that she said white privilege. That is the story. The story isn't that she got kicked out. It's that she tweeted out white privilege as though because Sophie Cunningham is white, somehow that's why she got kicked out. They go on to defend her, the story, the narrative that she's not a dirty player. She makes plays like this all the time. I put together a little clip of DJ Carrington, who is definitely one of the dirtiest players in
the ever-entertaining circus that is the WNBA these days, where every hard foul somehow transforms into a full-blown cultural referendum, and every social media post becomes the spark for endless online trials, DJ Carrington has somehow managed to turn a routine defensive play into the kind of spectacle that keeps the league's drama quotient higher than the actual scoring average on most nights.
Now all of a sudden you have this Dijonai Carrington get thrown out of the game, goes right into the locker room, and immediately gets on her phone and puts out a post on Thread talking about white privilege. How is everybody supposed to react to that?
Yeah, I mean,
what are the opinions are we all supposed to have when you do something that stupid?
Yeah, and then now so you think she's backtracking from the whole thing and saying
I think the whole thing was just, because of the timeline of everything and because of...
Picture this. A fast break situation unfolds. Sophie Cunningham is streaking toward the basket like she owns the paint. And Carrington, ever the determined defender who has built her reputation on never letting an easy layup slide by without a fight, comes flying in from behind with an arm that connects a little too solidly with the head and jaw area, sending Cunningham crashing to the floor in a heap that looks far more dramatic than a standard basketball collision has any right to be.
Sophie Cunningham in a vulnerable position in the air. Oh, wow. Yeah, I mean, there's no question.
WNBA player Dijonai Carrington of the Chicago Sky was ejected after a flagrant 2 foul on Sophie Cunningham in last night's WNBA game. As you saw from the video, Sophie was going for a fast break layup when Dijonai decided it would be a good idea to go after her head instead of the ball. So that obviously prompted the flagrant 2. The referees take a look at it and
officials review it, upgrade the call to a flagrant 2 for that unnecessary and excessive contact on a player in a vulnerable position, and just like that, Carrington finds herself ejected from the game before the first quarter has even fully settled into its rhythm, leaving the Chicago Sky to figure out how to navigate the rest of the contest without one of their more energetic pieces on the floor.
The legitimate hatred for somebody because of what they believe in and because of what they look like and because of how popular they are, I could say it's a targeted attack.
Yeah, oh, clearly. I mean, I think most people believe that.
But then on top of that, it's not only white privilege she puts out there. She puts in our next post, she puts the game date of the next time they're going to play the Fever.
Yep.
I mean, that's almost like, it feels to me like it's a...
But the real show, the part that elevated this from a simple on-court physicality issue into something the entire sports media machine could feast on for days, came in the immediate aftermath when Carrington decided the locker room was the perfect venue for some spontaneous commentary that somehow managed to cast the entire sequence in a light that suggested deeper forces at play. Rather than simply accepting the ejection as the cost of an aggressive defensive effort that went a bit too far, She opted to float the idea that something about the whole situation reeked of advantages that had nothing to do with the pure mechanics of the foul itself, framing the response in a way that implied Sophie Cunningham somehow benefited from factors beyond the black and white letter of the rulebook. It was the kind of move that felt less like a measured critique of officiating consistency and more like an attempt to layer some particularly sharp and dirty implications onto an opponent who had just been on the receiving end of a forearm that left her needing a moment to collect herself before charging back for a confrontation that teammates had to break up. The timing alone made it land with maximum impact, arriving while the bruises were still fresh and the highlights were still looping across every highlight package, turning what could have been a forgettable early exit story into a multi-day saga about race, privilege, physicality, and everything else the modern sports discourse loves to chew on until the next controversy comes along.
This story has, and the WNBA has totally taken on a life of its own because she commits the flagrant 2 on Sophie Cunningham. Clearly a flagrant 2, by the way. I don't think there's anybody with 2 eyeballs who thinks it's not. Goes for a block that then carries over and clothesline. See you later, hit the showers. There's flagrant 2s in basketball in the WNBA. This is a totally fine reaction, I think, to a play like that. And maybe the story ends there if Carrington doesn't go to the locker room, pick up her phone, and tweet white privilege.
What makes the entire episode land with such delicious irony is the way it forces everyone to rewind the tape on Carrington's own path and notice just how thoroughly her origin story seems to clash with the persona currently dominating the headlines. Once upon a time, long before the flagrant fouls and the social media declarations, she was widely regarded as the calm, friendly, reasonable type who approached the game with a level of composure that suggested someone raised in an environment that valued discipline and measured responses over theatrics. Growing up in San Diego, she attended Horizon Christian Academy, a private Christian school where the atmosphere leaned heavily into faith, structure, and the central pillar, with her father transitioning after his playing days into a role as a marriage and parenting pastor, while her mother stayed active in ministry work, ensuring that the household operated with a clear moral framework that emphasized responsibility and self-control. And then there is the matter of her father, Dijonai Carrington, whose own athletic resume reads like the kind of success story that opens doors and provides a foundation most people would describe as solidly advantageous. An 8-year NFL career as a safety took him through stops with the Denver Broncos, Detroit Lions, San Diego Chargers, Jacksonville Jaguars, and Oakland Raiders, including appearances in 2 Super Bowls, where he contributed in meaningful ways, from kick return duties that set up scores to starting roles in high-stakes championship games.
Her privilege claim. Okay, this woman, her dad was in the NFL.
No.
And apparently was like really good. Standout safety in the NFL, who played in 2, not 1, but 2 Super Bowls during his 8-year professional career. Her mother, Vicky, was a star track athlete. She attended Horizon Christian Academy, a private K-12 school in San Diego. It closed in 2018, but her tuition there averaged between $8,000 and $11,000 a year.
That kind of professional pedigree does not just disappear into the ether. It creates a household where athletic excellence is the baseline expectation, where resources for training and development are more readily available, and where the path to elite programs feels less like an impossible climb and more like a natural progression. Carrington herself took full advantage of that environment, becoming a highly touted prospect who scored over 2,000 points in high school, earned McDonald's All-American honors, and headed off to Stanford, where she double-majored in psychology and African American studies while helping the Cardinals secure Pac-12 tournament titles. She later transferred to Baylor for a graduate season that further sharpened her game before the WNBA draft brought her into the professional ranks with the Connecticut Sun. All of that background paints a picture of someone who entered the league with the tools, the education. The foul on Cunningham was not an isolated incident floating in a vacuum of perfect sportsmanship. It arrived against the backdrop of a season already filled with debates about physicality, consistency in officiating, and the various ways players choose to respond when the whistle does not go their way. Carrington has insisted the contact was never intentional and that her style has always involved chasing down plays with full commitment, but the optics of the moment, combined with the decision to immediately frame the aftermath in terms that dragged broader societal issues into a basketball game, have invited a level of scrutiny that grows more intense with every passing second.
Dijonai played tackle football as a little girl, and her parents encouraged it. 2 torn ACLs, and she talks about what those injuries revealed about her character, her discipline, and her faith. She wants to be a forensic psychologist. She talks about faith, family, being a role model for young girls. That's the young woman Stanford put on film.
Media coverage has latched onto every subsequent performance, dissecting not just the stats but the body language, the interactions with officials, and the overall intensity that now carries an extra layer of baggage. In the games that followed the ejection, the camera angles seemed to linger a little longer whenever she contested a shot or closed out on a perimeter player, searching for any hint that the aggression had not been fully dialed back. One outing saw her make contact above the neck with multiple opponents in the same contest, drawing technicals for arguing with referees and generating fresh rounds of commentary about whether the earlier incident had left a lasting mark on her approach. Another night featured her complaining about a courtside fan loud enough that security briefly intervened, only for the situation to resolve itself in a way that somehow still managed to keep her name trending. The performances themselves have swung between productive scoring bursts, including a career-high point total in one return game, and quieter nights where the minutes piled up without the same explosive impact. But the conversation rarely stays confined to the box score anymore. Instead, every possession becomes potential evidence in the ongoing trial of whether the once calm product of a private Christian school and an NFL household has fully embraced a more confrontational identity that prioritizes making statements over simply making plays.
Right now, Dijonai Carrington is looking around the room like, oh my God, I've never been in this much fire. I mean, it's getting so bad that now her endorsements are potentially about to pull out on representing.
The scrutiny extends beyond the court into the broader ecosystem of analysis and reaction that thrives on these moments. Commentators who once might have focused purely on defensive metrics now weave in references to the privilege discourse she herself introduced, creating a feedback loop where her background becomes fair game for examination in ways that highlight the contrasts. Growing up with a father who reached the highest levels of professional football and then pivoted into pastoral work, attending a private academy that provided a structured environment with family members coaching the team, and earning degrees from one of the most prestigious universities in the country, all form a resume that undercuts any simplistic narrative about systemic disadvantages. That reality has not stopped the online presented as eloquent and measured in interviews about overcoming injuries and balancing academics with athletics. The transformation, or at least the perception of one, from that reasonable young woman into the player whose aggressive foul and subsequent framing of the response dominate the news cycle, has become its own subplot, complete with exaggerated takes that wonder aloud how the values of a faith-centered household somehow produced this particular brand of on-court and off-court intensity.
Not you, but I did not go to a fancy private school that cost 20 grand a year, or have both of my parents in the home since my dad died when I was 15, both of them earning, both of them with enormous privilege thanks to their incredible God-given talents in the athletic field, one who was a double NFL Super Bowl player. How dare she try to play the white privilege card?
Transitions between games only amplify the effect, as the league schedule marches forward with little regard for the lingering drama. The Skyface opponents who now enter the matchup with an extra awareness of Carrington's recent history, adjusting defensive schemes or simply bracing for the physicality that has become a talking point. Her own teammates navigate the spotlight that follows her, knowing that a hard foul in the paint or a heated exchange with an official will inevitably circle back to the Cunningham incident and that the outcome somehow reflected advantages unrelated to the contact itself has locked her into a cycle where every aggressive moment is filtered through that lens, turning routine basketball physicality into potential evidence of a pattern. What elevates the whole situation into pure comedic gold is the sheer predictability of the media machine's response. The same outlets that covered her rise as a promising talent with a strong family foundation now devote segments to unpacking the privilege angle she introduced, complete with timelines of her education and athletic lineage that serve as unintentional punchlines. Private school tuition estimates get tossed around as if they somehow settle the debate. Super Bowl appearances by her father become relevant data points in a basketball foul discussion, and her psychology degree gets referenced as proof that she should have known better than to open this particular can of worms.
You can't act as though you are the genius in a room and everybody else is idiotic. What I mean by that is, if you are going to suggest that we should think critically about a statement white privilege when you at the Indiana Fever, you didn't give us much to think critically about. You uttered a phrase, white privilege, of which is both incredibly inflammatory and also a very volatile word, but you didn't give us any context. So now we, as the interpreter, since you posted it publicly on Threads for the world to see, we, the interpreter, now have to try to figure out what exactly were you talking about? Well, common sense would deduce that you were talking about fouling a white individual and getting ejected.
The exaggeration reaches peak levels when analysts frame her recent performances not as the natural ups and downs of a player returning from injury or adjusting to a new team environment with the Chicago Sky, but as further chapters in the saga of a once reasonable athlete whose aggression has now invited non-stop examination. Every steal, every contested rebound, every technical foul accumulates in the public ledger as another data point confirming that the calm version from Horizon Christian Academy has been replaced by something far more willing to push boundaries and then comment on the aftermath in ways that invite the very scrutiny she might prefer to avoid. As the season progresses and the games continue to pile up, the scrutiny shows no signs of easing because the modern sports landscape thrives on contrasts to fade quickly. The aggressive nature of the foul on Cunningham, followed by the attempt to attach dirty implications about advantages that somehow favored the other side, has ensured that every subsequent performance carries the weight of that original moment. What was once the trajectory of a friendly and composed prospect has become the ongoing examination of a player whose decisions keep the conversation alive, forcing the audience to reconcile the private school upbringing and the Super Bowl-winning father's influence with the current reality of ejections, technicals, and social media statements that refuse to stay confined to the basketball court.
Let's go look at Dijonai Carrington in the WNBA. Different person. Not just physically, but spiritually as well. The joy is gone. The gratitude is gone. What's left is grievance, anger, looking for a microphone. Compare her Stanford face to her WNBA presentation, and you see a woman who's buried the person she used to be under layers of makeup, weaves, fake eyelashes, hair dye.
In the end, the entire episode serves as a reminder that in the WNBA of 2026, a hard foul is never just a hard foul, a background is never just a background, and a player who once embodied calm reasonableness can find herself under a microscope that grows more intense with every second the league and the media continue to follow her every move. The relentless spotlight now transforms even ordinary possessions into potential flashpoints that fuel endless speculation about motives and patterns, ensuring that Carrington's every defensive rotation or contested rebound invites fresh layers of interpretation from analysts who cannot resist connecting the dots back to that fateful afternoon. Opposing benches adjust their approaches with the awareness that any physical exchange involving her risks reigniting upbringing and the choices that redefine a career in real time, leaving little room for the quieter narrative that once defined her rise. In a league where reputations shift as quickly as the scoreboard, the ultimate irony remains that the very background once celebrated for its stability now amplifies every moment of intensity, locking her story into a cycle of scrutiny that promises to echo long after the final buzzer of the season fades into memory.